All right, guys. This is your test 4 PPT. So let's look at the passage on test 4. Now, he says that the founders of the Republic viewed the revolution primarily in political rather than economic or social terms, right? So for us, it was more political rather than economic or social. And they talked about education as an essential to public good, uh, a goal that took precedence over knowledge as occupational training or as a means to self-fulfillment or self-improvement. Okay. So they thought that education meant self-fulfillment or self-improvement. All right. So here, these are the keywords. Okay. Over and over again, the revolutionary generation, both liberal and conservative on outlook, asserted its conviction that the welfare of the republic rested upon an educated citizenry and that schools, especially free public schools, would be the best means to educating the citizenry in civic values and the obligations required by everyone in democratic republican society. Okay. So he said that public schools should teach children, okay, how to be a good citizen. All agreed that the principal ingredients of a civic education were literacy, okay, and the inculcation of patriotic and moral virtues, and some other added that studies of history and studying of principles of republic government of itself. Okay, founders, as was the case of almost all of their successors, were long on exhortation and rhetoric regarding the value of civic education, but they left it to the textbook writers to distill the essence to those values for school children. Okay. Texts in American history and government appeared as early as 1790s. The textbook writers turned out to be very largely of conservative persuasion, more likely federalists in outlook than Jeffersonian, and almost universally agreed that political virtue must rest upon moral and religious precepts. Okay, so they cared that political virtue, the kind of political features that they should have to become good at politics, must be more than moral and religious ones. Since most textbook writers were New Englander, this meant that the texts were infused with Protestant and above all Puritan outlook. So this talks about the religious outlook that they have been presenting. In the first half of the Republic, civic education in the schools emphasized the inculcation of civic values and made little attempt to develop participatory political skills. So they basically told about civic skills, but they did not make sure that these people participated in the politics. That was a task left to the incipient political parties, town meetings, churches, and the coffee or ale houses where the men gathered for conversation. If you can see, the gender divide is clearly visible over here. At that time, during the 1700s, it was very, very evident that universal suffrage was not very popular yet. So women were not really given that right to vote. Additionally, as a reading for certain Federalist papers of the period would demonstrate that the press probably did more to disseminate realistic as well as partisan knowledge of government than the schools. So basically, we see that clearer ideas, okay, clearer ideas came from where clear ideas came from news than from where we're getting clearer ideas from news than from schools. Okay. All right. So what else? The goal of education, however, was to achieve a higher form of unum of the US and on several US coins for the republics. Okay, in the middle half of the 19th century, political values taught in public and private schools did not change substantially from the one that was celebrated in the first 50 years. In the textbooks of the day, their rosy hues, if anything, became golden. So just the textbooks became golden. I mean, the textbooks became old, but everything else, the values and all, was still the same. To the resplendent values of liberty, equality, and benevolent Christian morality were now added to the middle class virtues, especially of New England, of hard work, honesty, and integrity, the rewards of individual effort and obedience to parents and legitimate authority. So, all the good values they put, but all of the political values that were taught in school, patriotism was preeminent. That means this was the most important one. Okay, and whenever teachers explain to the school children why they should love their country about all this, the idea of liberty assumed pride of place. Okay, so this was the idea why they should love their nation. Okay, let's look at the first question. The first question talks about the passage deals primarily with the dash content of early textbooks on American history and government, role of education in late 19th and 18th century, influence of New England Puritanism. Okay, so if we look at this question carefully, we can understand that D, E, C are all wrong. Okay, because we're not only looking at this is a partial scope choice. All right, same with the case of Protestant work ethic in modern America. That's also a partial scope choice. When we're looking at establishment of universal free public education, now this is an out of scope choice. He told us that public schools are better at impacting civic knowledge. He never told us that it should be universal public free education in America. Okay, so this is an out of scope choice. Now, role of education in late 18th and 19th century and middle, this becomes too definite. So this becomes a partial scope choice, and your answer should be A, content of early textbooks on American history and government, which has been spoken throughout your passage. I hope I'm clear with this question. All right.